All right, welcome back everybody to On the Ball, the video podcast series from the Vanderbilt Sports and Society Initiative. Really excited today to have two extraordinary filmmakers with us who will be coming to Nashville and to Vanderbilt soon. So it's Ben West and Yancey Burns behind Imagining the Indian, the Fight Against Native American Mascoting. Ben is a director and producer of the film, Yancey producer of the film. Guys, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us. We're excited to come to Vanderbilt, and it'll be great.
Yeah, we were joking around before I hit record here that you're both in hotel rooms, which is and living out of suitcases, which I guess is a great problem to have, in your shoes. Yancey, what's it been like for you traveling around the country telling this story?
It's been amazing. I mean, that's such a big part of the project, is we wanted it to be a call to action, and we wanted to get eyes on the film, and we wanted everybody who saw the film to become a part of the movement. And so getting to take it to different communities, no matter how big or small the venue, has been so rewarding, because you see it in action. You see folks reaching out to their local school boards. You see them posting on their social media. You see them becoming a part of the fight against Native American mascoting. It's pretty thrilling. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and so Ben, where are you now? What was the event you just did? And you mentioned it rattled off a number of cities that you're headed to next.
So we just screened at the DeSable Museum here in Chicago last night, and in a couple hours here we're going to hop on a flight to Phoenix. We're going to screen with Cahokia in Phoenix. Then we are on to Las Vegas, and then Reno, and then San Antonio. We'll have a brief break then, and then in November we will be on a plane every other day.
Wow.
As you mentioned, is a great problem to have. We as Yancey mentioned, we want eyes, ears, hearts, and minds on this film, and so we're thrilled to be living out of a suitcase for a few months here.
Well, Vanderbilt Athletics and the Vanderbilt Sports and Society Initiative will be one of the sponsors of your event here in Nashville, which, just to mention, is November 15th in the Rothschild Black Box Theater on campus. There's a reception at 5 p.m., screening of the film at 6, and then a talk back after. So we're so excited that you guys are coming to campus. And before we get into the subject matter of the film itself, I was wondering if you could just tell our listeners or viewers a little bit more about yourselves and your background, either on this issue or as filmmakers, and how you came to be part of the team behind this film. Start with you, Yancey.
Well, I started on my path to being a filmmaker in a little bit non-traditional way. So I was a government attorney for about 10 years, and I was working in Washington, D.C. And I came home one day, and my wife was kind enough to ask, Yancey, do you enjoy being an attorney? And I responded back, well, not much, but thank you so much for asking, because I was just dying for somebody to ask me that. My wife teaches at George Washington University in DC, and so she said, you can go back to school, as a faculty member, you can go for free. And I said, okay, well, I'll try that out. And I had a journalism background, so I was going to go back and do Stratcom and do PR, just a smooth transition. And while I was there, I was introduced to the Documentary Film Center at GW, and they take about 10 students a year, and I thought, oh, there's no way I'll get into it, but I was lucky enough to do that, and I got in, and one of the things that you do when you first get into the Doc Film Center is they place you in an externship with a production company in DC. And I was lucky enough to show up on the doorstep of Aviva Kempner, who was the co-director of Imagining the Indian and the executive director of the Cheshla Foundation, who produced the film. Mm-hmm. And it turned out she was an alum of my law school, and we had a lot in common, and we both wanted to make films about social justice, and we both wanted to have that desire. And so yeah, I started working with her, and one day she came in the office and said, well, I'm working with Ben West, and he's a native director, and I'm working with Kevin Blackistone. Do you know who that is? And I was, well, I've been watching Kevin on ESPN since I was in high school. So yeah, I knew who that is. And we're interested in maybe making a film about native mascots, about Washington football. Is that something you'd be interested in working on? And of course, I jumped at the opportunity as fast as I could. And it's been such an experience, because, the documentary, part of the doc is that the first half hour is a lesson in learning the history of Native people in America. And it was a learning experience for me as well. I mean, I grew up in public school in West Virginia, so there's so much about this that I did not know or understand, but that's what was so exciting about it, is that we were learning as we were making it, and we really realized how the audience needed to absorb that information, because that's how we were making it.
Yeah. Oh, fascinating. Thank you. And Ben, how about you? What's your backstory and how did you come to this project?
I actually couldn't avoid this project.
Right.
So I grew up. I'm Native myself, and I had the privilege of growing up around folks like my father, Rick West, my auntie Suzanne Joan Harjo, who are all featured in the film, Kevin Gover. So I was I don't want to say indoctrinated, but I'll go ahead and say that. I was aware of these issues of Native representation in sports, and one of the things I'm really happy about is that we do use sports as a lens through which to explore these issues, but it goes so much deeper. The film and the sort of subject matter itself. We use sports as a lens through which to examine all sorts of Native representation in media and film and TV and literature, pop culture, and so it was a no-brainer for me to take this on, and I felt a responsibility to do justice, not only to the people who are making change right now, but the decades of activism that have led us to this point where we are seeing change happen much more rapidly than we have in the past, and I'm really hopeful that will continue.
Absolutely. Ben, can you take us back to I don't know if maybe the early 20th century? You mentioned that it's about more than sports, and so I think about Boston baseball team, early 1900s, with a Native American nickname, like Butter, motorcycles, Jeeps. Like, where did this start? What's behind this idea of products or teams, having these images or names associated with them, referring to Native Americans?
Well, it comes down to appropriation, really. And there's a long history. Even, I mean, sports, yes, maybe it was early 20th century, but it really goes back to European contact on this continent, and the problem, the issue is that people tend to put Native Americans in a bubble, as if all Native Americans are simply Native Americans, which is true, but we are so diverse, and that's the issue. That let's go back to sports. When you have a Indian head in a war bonnet, which is the traditional way of portraying in a plains headdress, if you will, that would be appropriate for me because I am Cheyenne, I am a Plains Indian, but that's a small sliver of the many cultures and communities that exist among Native people, and it's reductive. We're kind of taking one thing and saying, oh, that's Indians, which is problematic because Native people are not a monolith. We are diverse, and I think we need to be understood as such.
Okay, and what is the different range of harm that this does? I know I've seen some studies about the harm that this appropriation and depiction does to Native American kids, as well as adults. I'm sure that it fosters discriminatory feelings in others. Yancey, what does the film convey, or what did you learn about the full range of harm that these depictions do?
Yeah, really, the public health aspect is what we want folks to take away from the film, because we feel like that's the most salient point of the film. Is that, for the longest time, folks thought about these mascots and these depictions and these appropriations as, if you're offended by it, you're just being too sensitive, or you're being too woke, or you're just being too, you're just taking it too seriously. But there are decades now of social science research and psychological research that let us know that there is a real tangible public harm to exposure to these mascots. We know from the research of folks like Dr. Stephanie Freiberg that exposure to these mascots lead to increased levels of suicide in Native people, particularly Native youth. We know that exposure to these mascots lead to decreased levels of self-esteem in Native people, particularly Native youth. And we know that exposure to mascots leads to just general worse health outcomes for Native people, again, particularly Native youth. And so we want folks to come away from the film, and if they have somebody in their life who just loves Atlanta baseball, or loves Chicago hockey, or loves Kansas City football, or loves one of these 2,000 schools across the country who still uses a Native American mascot, we want them to say to the folks in their life, there's no good reason why the name of a sports team should ever be more important than the health and well-being of people. And so that's just the point we want folks to come away with, that this is a public health crisis.
And to your point, Andrew, Dr. Stephanie Freiberg's research not only pinpoints exactly what Yancey just said, but it actually has proven to affect not only Native people, but all sorts of historically marginalized groups. So it's not a Native specific issue.
Okay.
Actually.
Very interesting. And you mentioned that the pace of change just seems to be accelerating. There's high profile examples of teams that have not changed yet, but you must be encouraged by what's happened in Washington and Cleveland. And those were both cases years in the making. But what do you both feel was why did it happen there? And what are the lessons learned on the success there that might be applied, whether it's high profile professional teams or the middle school down the road? Ben, you first.
Yeah. So, what ultimately changed, let's take Washington football, for example. It took pressure from FedEx to force Dan Snyder to make that change, but that pressure would not have existed without the work of people like Suzanne Chonharjo and the many people that she inspired to take on this fight. Without folks like those, boots on the ground, people out there protesting at games, outside stadiums, that's what really led to a corporation like FedEx taking a stand. And that's what we hope that people will take away from the film is yes, it became this sort of corporate culture event, but that is a direct result of the people who have put in so much blood, sweat, and tears over many years to make this issue visible to all of us.
Okay, so a real strong, authentic grassroots effort that eventually convinced a corporate partner with a lot of money behind them
Absolutely.
to apply pressure. Was that the same case in Cleveland, Yancey, or were there any different wrinkles to the story there?
Yeah, no, much the same case, and it really is the case everywhere you see these changes happen. That it's a combination of folks. Grassroots efforts to let folks know that there are folks being harmed by this, and then when that comes together with that corporate responsibility, that's really when it happens. And it happens on a small scale level too, not just in these major teams, these national level teams. We're seeing it in a place like Cookeville, Tennessee, where we were just at, and we screened there because All Good Middle still is the R words, and they still have the logo. Every student has to walk over the head of a Native person as they walk into their middle school every day. And so we were there, and there's now a movement in Cookeville to change the name. And part of what they're doing now is they're trying to, the sign outside of All Good Middle is sponsored by Walmart and New York Life and McDonald's and a few other corporations. So now it's we need to make those corporations see that there is a community of people who want and desire and need this change. And then, bring in that corporate responsibility on the other end. And that's how you really make it happen.
Okay. I watched the trailer for the film, and it starts with a speaker talking about how you can't be a little bit pregnant, you can't be a little bit racist. And so like, what do you say to people that would say like the Washington football name was especially egregious, the Cleveland baseball logo was especially bad, but Kansas City football team's name isn't as bad, or the Atlanta baseball team's name isn't as bad? Like, what's the counter argument to people who say that, it's not that big of a deal in these situations, which aren't as bad as some of the others?
Well, so Kevin Gover actually touches on this in the film. There may be degrees, but the fact is there's a historical problem here, which is that Native people have been appropriated. So there's in my mind, it's wholesale change at this point. There's not a level of this which is okay. It's we've been victimized by appropriation for so long now that it just needs to stop. Full stop, period, whatever punctuation you want to put on it. As Stephanie Freiberg says in the film, like, why is it okay for Native people to be really the only people that are portrayed this way in sports? Like, it's animals or forces of nature and Native people. Why?
Right.
Yeah, and all the social science research speaks to that. I mean, the reason that these are so harmful is that they're tools of dehumanization. I mean, what happens is the image on the Chicago hockey jersey becomes the picture that the collective conscious has of Native people. It takes the place of actual Native people. It is a tool of dehumanization, and that's the harm. That's why the levels and the degrees of offensiveness don't matter. They're tools of dehumanization, whatever they may be.
So living in Nashville, Atlanta is an easy road trip from here. I've been to baseball games there. Actually had sort of a mini confrontation with a Braves front office person. We were at a game, and I had read that they were de-emphasizing the tomahawk chop, and that was not what I experienced at the game. They in fact had built a neon tomahawk in right field that is lit up, and when they play that drum beat at certain points of the game. And I was surprised by that, and I turned around and said, you're still doing that? And they said, yeah, it's great, isn't it? And I said, no, it's racist. And they said, well, the fans like it. And I said, who cares? What's been your experience, or what can you report on what's happening with Atlanta that seems to be doubling down to the point that when they built a new stadium, they built a neon tomahawk, rather than changing? Yancey?
Yeah, well, I mean, you've seen Atlanta and how they respond. I mean, obviously, the way they responded to Ryan Helsley, who's a Cherokee pitcher pitching for the Cardinals. I mean, yeah, they said, we'll ban the tomahawk chop when he's on the mound, only when he's on the mound. So only when he's personally being affected by it. And so, yeah, you've seen just a reticence to change it all out of Atlanta. And I of course don't understand it, because the excuse they make is that, the fans like it. Well, the fans also like cheering along the 7 Nation Army from the White Stripes. So it's not like it's impossible to create a new chant that the fans can get into that isn't racist and isn't harmful to folks. I mean, if you've never seen folks like Galen Krauser in Kansas City break down crying over how racist and harmful this is, to see a stadium full of folks in Kansas City, folks who our friends and relatives and neighbors engaging in this practice. Yeah, it's shameful, to say the least.
And Ben, moving on to Kansas City, I mean, when you watch a game on TV, it seems like the TV networks are not helping in the fact that they show the chop, or they show fans in a headdress and war paint. It must just be enraging to see entities that have some power to, at a minimum, just not show it, not seem to get the point. Is that the case? And is pressure on media entities as important as pressure on teams themselves?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, in Kansas City, for example, you know, we're seeing half stepping, both by franchises and by media, and you know, these are people with the power to change minds, or at least take a stand. And I sure wish they would. Just you know, in the film, for example, we feature Bob Costas, who at halftime of a Monday night football game, I think it was, you know, spoke his mind and said the R word is a slur, and why are we embracing this slur? And if somebody like Bob Costas can do that, then why can't the front office of the Kansas City football team, the Atlanta baseball team, the Chicago hockey team, or any broadcaster who is on television or writing a column, like you have influence, and you can use that influence to better all of our futures in getting rid of this sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And people do. I wish more people would.
Yeah. So that leads to two questions I wanted to ask about the role of allies. It seems like in this case, allies are necessary. If it was up to Native American people, these nicknames wouldn't exist, right? So what is the proper role for a non-Native person on this issue? And what are the most effective things that can be done? Starting with you, Yancey.
Yeah, allyship is the key. I mean, I'm off to say that if you want to have an ally, you have to be an ally. You know, I'm from a community in Appalachia that has plenty of problems, and we need allies. And so I always encourage my folks in Appalachia to be an ally to folks, because that's how we get things accomplished. We were actually on a panel last night with a speaker who said that you can either be of a community, you can be an ally with a community, or you can just be a bigot. And to an extent, that is the case, and those are the three options that a person has. And so yeah, it is going to take, you know, all of us coming together. I mean, that's how the movement works, is that we all come together and agree, yeah, that there's no reason for this. There's no good reason for this, especially since we know it's harming people. There's no good reason for this. And so yeah, that allyship point is so important. So yeah, we try to drive it home as often as possible.
Mm-hmm. And Ben, do you agree with that? Like there's no room to be a bystander on this issue. And I mean, I think sometimes hesitation for a person who could be an ally is, well, beyond their own self-interest or selfishness, that it's not their issue. You know, maybe they have less sinister reasons for not getting involved, just not knowing the right thing to do. Like, what is the right thing to do for someone who's watching this? They're sympathetic to the cause, they want to do something, but they don't have connections to know where to plug in. You know, like, what are some simple steps to get started?
Well, I'm going to pass this to Yancey in just a moment. But
Okay.
I will say that you know, that the film is not just a film. It's a call to action, and we're part of a movement, a small part of a movement. It's not just a movie; it's a movement. And you know, we like to provide resources to folks who want to get involved on any level. It can be as simple as joining a Facebook group or posting on social media that you are an ally. You know, Delana Studi has one of my favorite lines in the movie, which is that you know, one voice crying out can make a difference. And you know, it's not a heavy lift, really. And you know, I think sort of being sympathetic and or empathetic as a human being is the way to go. And you know, in making this movie, it has inspired me to do the very same thing for other communities.
Okay.
And with that, I will pass it to Yancey.
All right.
Yeah, because of course, and I appreciate you passing it, because as soon as we started screening this movie, that's the first question you get afterwards is so what can I do? You know, I've learned so much now. What can I do? And so our immediate focus was we put a page on our website, how to get involved. And we lead people to organizations like Not in Our Honor in Kansas City, like Arizona to Rally, like the National Congress of the American Indians, who are tracking all these schools going around, the name changes, and have actually a toolkit up on their website for how you can do it in your community. So yeah, we're trying to be essentially a clearinghouse for getting folks to these movements, however it may be. But to Ben's point, yeah, we encourage folks, even if you don't have the bandwidth to get out and support an organization directly, or be a part of the movement directly, post on Facebook, you know, throw up an Instagram post, throw up a Twitter post. It works. I mean, we've seen it in action work. We saw it in Cookeville. One of the school board members in Putnam County came out to the screening because she saw it on Facebook. And so we see that just those little things, even if you're just reaching your network may be small, but you have no idea the impact your network may have on the larger community.
Wonderful. I'm curious about this. What about cases where teams, in my opinion, it seems like maybe they'll co-opt a member of a Native American community to say, oh, it's okay with us. You know, like the Atlanta baseball will say, well, we have like an advisory group. Florida State football will say, well, we have permission from the Seminoles. Typically, there's a financial interest behind those agreements, it seems like. But what sort of a problem is that? It seems like it gives an out to fans of those teams to say, it's okay, you know, not all Native American people feel the same way on this issue. You know, they've got the, you know, leaders of the tribe like behind them on this. Is every case different? In general, is it really a case of some money exchanging hands to look like it's okay? What do you have to say about that, Ben?
Yes. It's and you know it's complex, but it's basically for lack of a better term, buying Indians, and that I don't think I need to explain how problematic that is, given the history and the roots of Native people since Europeans contacted our shores.
Right, right. Okay.
Yeah, and
So,
I think Ben's father says it best in the film. He says, you know, like for example, Florida State. He says, you know, if he thought that people watched Florida State games and thought of the Seminole Nation as a highly successful business entity of the modern era, then that would be incredible if that's what we were portraying. But it's not. What we're seeing on Saturdays is a white kid dressed up in red face, trotted out on a horse, and so the reality of it is just it's not portraying anything positive.
Mm-hmm. A couple other things before we have to go. I could talk to you guys for hours, but just on like words, you know, the film has the word Indian in it. We hear Native American, we heard indigenous. What's the proper word to use? Is it different for everybody? Is there a wrong word to use? Could you just educate people who aren't using these words every day? Like, I think some people are afraid of making a mistake sometimes. So what would you say about that, Ben?
So we get that question at literally every panel we are at, and that's fine. You know, my advice to anybody who asks that question is, well, if you don't want to get in trouble, my best advice is to use indigenous. But you know, the Native people vary on this very issue themselves. Some people, you know, are okay with the term Indian. Some people are not. And the point really here is that Native people ourselves, again, are not a monolith. We have a diversity of opinions on that very thing. You know, I myself tend not to take issue with what you call me. If you call me something that I'm not comfortable with, I'll just tell you. And if you're not in a confrontational way. And you know, if you encounter a Native person and you guys are talking, just ask, like, what would you like to be referred to as? What would you like to be? And we'll tell you. We're, you know, we're easy to get along with.
And what are your thoughts on land acknowledgement statements? I know that the student organizations on campus here have written a draft of one. It's not officially adopted yet. I go to various events in different cities, and sometimes there will be a land acknowledgement statement, read before an event. Other times, not. Sometimes it seems very genuine. Sometimes it seems a little bit like just like performance or performative that it's being read. Do you have thoughts on that topic? Start with you, Ben.
Sure. I do have thoughts on that topic. So I think land acknowledgements in theory are a good thing, but they need to be genuine. And as such, they need to recognize the fact that there was a genocide on this land that we are acknowledging, and that encompasses all of the land. The second thing is that if you are going to give a land acknowledgement, you need to consult with the people on whose ancestral lands you are acknowledging. And that could be a number of tribes. It could be a single tribe, depending on where you are. But it is not in the purview of say an academic institution to go and draft their own land acknowledgement. You need to consult with the people whose land you are actually acknowledging.
Got it. Okay. And last question, with Kansas City being one of the teams that's still out there, allyship being important, publicity being important, Taylor Swift from here in Nashville is now.
I knew we were going to get to Taylor.
is now a Kansas City football fan, at least for a little while, as long as this relationship lasts. Like, are you hopeful that she might? I mean, she's been really outspoken on a number of issues and seems to be, a progressive figure. She's got a huge following. Yancey, have you heard anything? Has she been approached on this, or do you have hopes?
I have hopes, and we have heard. I mean, obviously, I'm going to give a big shout out to Ronald Lavaldo from Not in Our Honor in Kansas City, because the moment the news dropped that Travis and Tay were an item, she contacted TMZ and she wrote a letter and she said, please, Taylor Swift, listen to what we're saying about this issue. And TMZ picked it up. USA Today picked it up. So yeah, I have hope that Taylor Swift, again, yes, we know she's progressive. I've listened to the Kelsey's podcast. I know they're reasonably progressive as well. So yeah, I do have hope that this is going to give the movement real momentum.
That'd be great if the Swifties get it done.
Exactly.
Get it done in the
exactly.
End. And to that point, tangentially maybe, we will be rolling out the film on VOD in January or February, and we plan to kind of package that around Kansas City football and. Okay. And whatever journey they are, I imagine they will be in the playoffs.
Right.
Yep.
I think that will be a great platform to get the movie out and bring awareness around Kansas City football.
Wonderful.
Yep.
Well, we're really looking forward to you guys coming to Vanderbilt campus, to Nashville again. It's going to be November 15th at the Rothschild Black Box Theater. Beautiful spot on campus, right on West End. 5 o'clock reception, 6 o'clock screening, and both of you will be there for the talk back afterwards, I believe.
Yep. Indeed.
So looking forward to you coming. Have you been to Vanderbilt or to Nashville before, either of you?
Yes, we were actually just there, a month ago, I think.
Oh, yeah, really? We've not been on campus, so we look forward to being on campus.
Okay, yep. Wonderful. Well, I look forward to meeting you in person, and thanks again for taking the time to do this, and best wishes on your travels, many travels between now and then.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Andrew.
All right, take care.